Okay, welcome back to our continued meeting from this morning. So it is again Monday, May 8th, 2023. We are continuing our 9 o'clock meeting to now it is 2 o'clock, 2:02 to be exact. Let the record reflect that we have 4 of our commissioners here. Commissioner Waldorf, I'm sure, is joining us as we speak. So we have all 5 commissioners are here. So we are going to continue with our agenda item, which is the master facility space planning discussion. So I don't know, Scott, if you want to lead off.
Yep, I'll just cue it up. So from our offsite that the commissioners had a couple months ago, there was a number of topical items that you were all sharing with a desire to start digging down into. One of them was our master facility space planning. We had, and Jeff and Gil will go through this, but at the end of, towards the end of COVID, the commissioners had utilized some of our CARES dollars to go towards a master facility planning effort, which really kind of gave us an inventory of who is where, what's all of our space, county campuses and county campus and some elsewhere as well. So we began looking into kind of available space where we have disparate functions at today in different locations that probably are more ideal to be co-located to individual spaces. So this is really meant to just be the starting of the conversation, get your feedback on a couple of the early ideas that the team has come up with. But we thought this was a good place to start, and we'll see where kind of your feedback lands. And there's not really decisions we're looking for today, but just feedback. Are we on the right track? Does this kind of give you a sense of where some opportunities are? What are some things that we're missing that you would like us to consider? So that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Gil, and I think they've got a presentation to walk through.
So I'm going to hand out just map of the campus. So we all, I think probably everybody knows all the buildings in question. The ones that have level A boxes around them are most of the ones we'll be discussing today. And so one thing I want to bring up at the very beginning, at some point we will be talking about possible lease expansion or purchase options of additional space. But for purposes of negotiations in the future, if you decide to go that way, that will be an executive session afterwards. So we're not going to be talking about specific properties in this first presentation. And it's been Rebecca, myself, and Gil mostly who have been doing this. Gil has walked us through a lot of the campus, the property, where things are at, a lot of background on the current state of our buildings, as well as the space plan around it. We've looked at we have a 2006, so it's getting a little bit outdated now, but we do have a master plan that was done, 17 years ago, give or take. And then we do, as Scott alluded to, we do have the April 2022 post-pandemic space usage analysis. And I would say it is more of an inventory of where we are. It's not really what I'd call a master plan. And some of the assumptions around work from home, I would say, have not proven to be accurate. I would say this plan relied on a lot of work from home. And I know like Ashley's HR department is heavy work from home, community services is heavy work from home. But what we've heard from others is by and large, people are back at least 3-4 days a week. There's a lot of hybrid going on, but a lot of people are back. Readily admit we have not talked to every leader on the campus yet, but we've heavily talked with all of the departments that report up through the board. We have had a couple one-offs with a couple of updates.
Are they back by choice or back by demand of the job?
Some of both, I would say.
Okay.
I would say it's mostly choice from what I've heard. Ashley, can you speak to that better?
Yeah, I would say a good chunk of it is choice, which then has led to other departments needing to. So like, for example, HR, most of the other departments are back now. So when the team is on site, it's often because they're meeting with people on site for meetings. So I also think the hybrid model is where most people have wound up kind of landing in general. And so just to have that team building and camaraderie that maybe we were starting to miss a little bit of in some departments. Also new leaders, we've had new leaders come into the county, and as they're trying to learn their teams and what they do and what are they doing, that's kind of brought some people back. So I would still say a lot of our departments are doing a healthy blend of both. And that probably is necessary for a lot of the groups that we serve in our community.
Okay, thank you.
And just one bit of historical information, all the way back to the 2006, even before, the yellow box on your map, that area at one point was discussed as a twin building to the Public Works building, a location to build essentially a mirror image with a parking structure that would be attached to it. So I just bring that up for historical context. It's not really part of today's discussion.
Well, and the S&T building, I mean, if you go back to the Olmsted Brothers' original master plan of this area, that was going to be an open park, government park and stuff. Hey, I was there.
I thought you were going to say a joke, but then it's like, oh wait, no, he's actually right. He's actually serious.
So-
No, this is.
Well, and the proceeds from the North Monroe TIF, initially what it was designed to do was to tear down the S&T building, build underground parking there, and then a green space on top of it. That was what the master plan was, 10, 15 years ago and stuff. So I just provide that historical perspective for you.
That's good for this conversation. The full 4 bullet points up on the current slide under background. So we looked at building condition and proximity, consolidation and cohesion of department locations. A lot of that's around the prosecutor's office. All of our historical reports, as well as currently, prosecutors are split 5 different areas right now. So they're one of the most spread out. Fiscal stewardship has been primarily around, a lot of talk around security and providing extra security in the Broadway Center building since there's courts in there. That's about a $60,000 a year expense. And that's just on the staff side. So if there's any equipment upgrades that needs to happen, that would be an addition. And so with that, I think we'll kind of start what we just talked about. On the next slide, you see the 5 buildings that the prosecutors are in. The Broadway S&T and public safety functions of the prosecutor's office would serve well by being in one location. The courthouse is upstairs above us here, and that is their family law division, which works well, as I've been told, with the court cases that are going on, and that's a very recent build out in the last few years. And then the juvenile court houses the prosecutors working in the juvenile cases. So those ones make sense where they are, but if we could consolidate them to 3 instead of 5, be some wins there. On the district court side, I'm sure as you all know, most of district court is in the public safety building. If the prosecutors were relocated, there would be room underneath the district court hallway to put in additional courtrooms. And then that could create the courts that we would lose on Broadway if we wanted to stop security. So that would be kind of a way to unify district court in one space. We haven't run numbers with Gil, just kind of broadly looking at current square footages and the prosecutor's square footage. There'd also be a likelihood of being able to fit in their mental health staff around therapeutic court and the IT staff, not county IT, but the IT dedicated to district court, which are currently also in Broadway, could all be put into our public safety building. So those are kind of some of the 2 of our most split functions that could really benefit from coming together. So looking at those functions, now we'll go through the buildings where they are. The next slide is the Broadway.
So I'm just gonna ask a quick question on the IT staff, because not every department has their own IT staff. A lot of it's consolidated. So is there a reason why we couldn't consolidate their IT staff?
My understanding is actually their IT staff,
Well-
separate from our,
Well, they're under their budget, as I recall.
yes.
But yes, there are a number of departments that have, over the years, take on their own IT staff. So I think Commissioner Keating, you raised a good question. Is that necessary? Are they doing similar functions to what our IT staff is doing? And would it be better served by having it under a single umbrella? That's one of probably half a dozen to a dozen that are like that, departments that are like that.
Good follow-up there, opportunity.
Just because I don't know what space is available in the IT building, but it just seems like that they're all servicing the same.
It's all IT.
Yeah,
Yes.
servers, help desks,
Computers,
desktops, yep.
you know, all of that, so, okay.
So we'll follow up on that. So the Broadway Center, you'll see, is just shy of 20,000 square feet. The prosecutor's office is about 2/3 of the building. There's also a daycare on the, the daylight basement level. It's not for staff, it's not a county staff daycare, it is for the court system. So if you have a court case, think domestic violence, custody issues where it benefit the child who's probably not school age yet, not needing to hear it, it's a place for the kids to be during that situation. As we just talked about, there's the 2 courtrooms as well as the mental health and IT staff that's specific to district court. There's also about 500 square feet for the Board of Equalization. There's 41 parking spots. 12 of them are under what I call kind of the carport, half of the downstairs building, under cover but not a garage. And then there's 29 spots directly to the west of the building on a surface lot. Again, the security is about $60,000 a year. The building needs a chiller, boiler, windows. The elevator is truly on Band-Aids. That alone, $500,000 for a complete rebuild. So you're looking at about 1.8 ballpark for just infrastructure type costs, estimating at 300 a square foot. That would include the 1.8. But if you look at the rest of the building, it would need upgraded to wider hallways for some ADA purposes. If you do a total remodel, if you're going to reimagine the space for a future need, modernize it, including the 1.8, you're looking at 5 to 6 million of investment. Again, that's if you go in and gut job remodel it. The estimated value is 2 to 2.5 million. I did bring the property on the corner a bit further down is for sale, the vacant lot for $285. Hasn't sold yet, so it may or may not be worth $285. So the county, you'll see on the county map I passed out to begin with, there's 3 boxes around Broadway because there's 3 separate lots. So we own the vacant area between the red square and the building, as well as the building itself. And the 2.25 is Gil's best estimate, including the 2 vacant lots.
No, just the items we had on there. I guess I want to look at the 1.8 million to add to bring to that building. Those are operational items there right now, and they are failing. So this is something we've had it in the budget several times, but we are getting to that critical stage with those. The problem with that building is that building's been so chopped up. We've turned conference rooms into office suites. The HVAC was never resized. I was kind of given that impression that it doesn't really matter. They just need a private office. So, but now I think we've gotten to the level where it's really cold in the winter. It's really hot in the summer, and it really is due for a rework.
We walk through it. It's sad. That's the word that comes to mind.
So as I remember that vacant lot and the lot next to it and stuff, there's a lot of rock outcropping in there.
Yes.
That would be expensive. That's probably why the 285 has been sitting there for a while, is you don't know how much excavation and or explosives you have to do to break up that rock.
It made me think of what they're building over by the new stadium.
Yes.
Watching some of that work happen.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
elevated.
So that's kind of a background on the Broadway. The next page is the S&T directly across to these windows here. That building is just over 7,500 square feet. The 2 floors you can see from here are prosecutor space. The basement, which is it's a kind of a daylight basement, it has an external exit on the south side. That is clerk's records. It's just long rows of files. There's no ADA in it, so you can walk around to get into the bottom level. It's only a staircase internal, and that's the only way to the second floor. It does have a better infrastructure. The HVAC, the roof, exterior paint, plumbing to the main has all been redone in recent years. You know, if this was on Redfin or Zillow, it would say good bones, bring your imagination to completely remodel the inside. But it's also, you know, it's a smaller building, but that's kind of its current status of that building.
Do we know how much money that North Monroe TIF has accumulated over the years?
Oh, I know. Randy does. Maybe not off the top of his head.
Aren't you just reading that this morning, Andy?
We might want to get a
We'll track
handle on
that.
that number and stuff,
We've
'cause,
looked at it in the last 6 months, but we'll get a number.
yeah.
It's decent size. It wasn't anything overwhelming.
No, it's not overwhelming because it was predicated upon reimagining, repurposing, whatever, North Monroe Street as part of for the Kendall Yards development and stuff. There's 2 TIFs. One was for Kendall Yards, one was North Monroe. The North Monroe has not generated the kind of revenue that the Kendall Yards TIF has, obviously, and stuff. So, but that money is available to spend on the campus.
But we'll find that number
Okay.
for you.
Probably not a big number yet.
So the next slide talks about if we were to bring those 3 groups of the prosecutors, what's currently in the public safety, the Broadway, and the S&T, into some new space that we don't have. It's about 120 staff we're looking at. We're estimating at least 20,000 square feet. They're currently in a little over, we figured about
Yeah.
22,000,
Yeah.
we're thinking. Right now, if you look at the 3 different locations. So conceivably, they could all fit in Broadway, but there'd be 0 room for growth. And that is a department that grows as our population grows, so don't know if that's the best solution. Conceivably, you could also build onto the Broadway building since we do own that property. So that can be a discussion for another time. As we talked about before, if we did move all the prosecutors from their current spaces, we think there'd be enough room in public safety to bring all those district court functions there, and we would be saving the 60,000 ongoing annual for security staff at Broadway. If you flip to the continuation of this, the daycare is under 500 square feet, it's in Broadway. The Board of Equalization is just over 500 square feet. Those are the easier places to relocate if you're going to vacate and consider selling Broadway. Just smaller square footages are easier to find spaces for. The other item of discussion of recent and also came up at the retreat is a 13th courtroom for Superior Court. Looking at the annex connected here, the 4th floor of the annex already has one large jury courtroom. Opposite the elevator lobby, you have the Bar Association and the Council for Defense. If those 2 groups found another home, I'm talking with Ashley Callan in Superior Court. She does believe there'd be enough space there to put a new jury court. A little bit tight, probably have to share the jury room with the other court. But looking at this building, just the realities of everything right now, without a major shifting of groups, that's the most logical that we have found. thoughts, comments?
Is the court daycare used like more by district court or Superior Court folks?
Whichever court has family law.
Superior Court, but
I'm just thinking,
I-
right, you'd want it to be accessible
yeah,
to people, so it's, yes.
we're not, I think it's available to anyone coming to
Right,
court to
right.
have their children go
Just
there.
wondering where,
Like,
yeah.
likely it's more of a family law use, which is Superior Court, but there's probably a blend. Don't know the numbers in each of them.
And they said there's pros and cons. There have been examples where court proceedings stop for 15 minutes because they're like, we need to clear the kids for this part, and so they walk them across and come back. So that can slow down the court process. They also gave examples when there's a contested who's going to get the kids, that they like having a little bit of space to prevent the parents from maybe arguing and screaming in front of the kids and letting things de-escalate before they get back to the kids. So they, bottom line, there's no perfect place to have it. There's pros and cons to both. What we heard from the people in the courts around that daycare.
For the Bar Association and Council for Defense, moving to a new improved space, do we know what that
We'll
piece
talk
is?
about that in executive session
Okay,
if that's okay.
fair enough.
Kind of we're just identifying those. If we were to move them, we would need to find additional space, leasing or purchasing something.
We wanted to bring at least a solution for the 13th
Yeah.
discussion to this initial conversation. Whether or not it's the solution, we wanted to bring a thought to start the conversation.
No bad idea in brainstorming.
So we can flip to the next, sure.
So we have talked off and on over the years about creating somewhere on the campus a wellness center and stuff. Is that still on the radar, or?
Yes, we've got some ideas for a wellness / workout
Okay,
room.
okay,
That is also, we've been noodling around with some ideas there.
good, okay, thank you.
We got a tentative place identified for it. We got to move some storage file cabinets out and stuff, but can be done.
So you can use the participants as part of their exercise program to move the stuff?
That's possibly a good first idea.
From a
Take
risk
this box up
perspective,
4 flights of
sign that waiver.
stairs.
Sign the waiver, please.
Volunteering?
Yes, no, I got my own gym, can't you tell?
Trust me, it's part of the exercise routine. You'll thank us later.
Yeah, right, okay.
So this last slide, if you run to the next one, just kind of recaps before we have, the first bullet would be an executive discussion. But, so district court can move the public safety, Broadway, needing to discuss, whether you want to invest a significant sum into it or possibly look at a sale there. With that other parcel for sale, possibly a developer could come and get the whole half of a block if they're looking at a bigger project. Per the listing, they can go up to 150 feet tall. You can put by the building there. I didn't check that, so I don't know if it's accurate or not. An idea for the 13th.
It is.
Okay. An idea for the 13th jury courtroom, which would be separate than the second floor small courtroom that's going to be starting soon. And then kind of thoughts around the S&T building if the prosecutors were to co-locate somewhere else. Everything from, it could be torn down and actually turn that whole block into something. We've talked a lot around the need to digitize our records kind of system-wide as a county. Maybe it could be a temporary space for just take your records there, and it could be a digitization center. The main floor could possibly be a daycare if you were looking at, getting out of the Broadway. We're always needing space for more records than just the paper records. So there's things that can be done with the S&T building, but pending what you have to do There is the ADA issue of the second floor only having a staircase, and internally to the basement, the only way is a staircase. You can, of course, walk around. Rebecca, have I skipped anything that's?
Yeah, I think you've covered it well.
Again, the intent here was just kind of stimulate the creative juices to start. Is this a logical place for us to start? There's all kinds of other areas that we can look at. We've been using the first floor of the Public Works building once family law vacated as just kind of transitional space until we figure out what our longer term plans are. We've had to move budget out with the conversion of the anticipated conversion of that space and where both the Commissioner Waldrop and Jordan sit to a court room over there. So it does allow some good flex space as we're moving chess pieces around on the board, if you will. But with one of the things that Jess said we noticed coming out of the post-pandemic is the very divided places that our prosecutor's office is at. And is there an opportunity to bring them together? And as we started kind of moving those things around, we realized, well, if we could find another place for those, and we don't want to invest in Broadway building and we wanted to sell it, that allows us to take some proceeds to invest in something else. We've got room in the public safety building to take on district court, so we can find other places. It's just that larger 20,000 thereabout square footage for the prosecutor's office that would allow them to come together more as their disparately located teams, and then figure out some of the other moving parts around. The other ones, Board of Equalization is fairly small. The daycare is a small space, so we could find places for them.
So we used to have the daycare here in the courthouse, and it made it easier for the jurors to be able to, as when the court took breaks and stuff. Then we moved it over to S&T, not S&T, to Broadway. I've had a number of folks that serve jury duty with kids approach me and said while it's great to know that your kids are on site, it's difficult to be able to visit your kids when the court takes a break, because then you got to go back through security. And so you might have a 15-minute break. It takes you 5 minutes to get over there, 5 minutes to say hi to the kids, 10 minutes to get back into the building and stuff. So there is that functionality of where we locate the daycare that we should be considered too as well.
Well, I'll bring up the law library. The law library has been another one. Does it need to be right here, or can it go over to S&T? That's another opportunity for possibly relooking at a different space that would free it up for the daycare and a couple. I'm not sure how big that space is. Do you have an idea what the law library space is right now?
They got a lot of space.
It's a big space when you go back into it, but it can be accommodated there.
Yeah.
It's not 5,000 square feet.
No, I tell you, we took some down because we did the family law expansion up there. We took a portion of it, but I want to say it's close to maybe 3,000 square feet.
Didn't we go through a process, and maybe you remember this, Mary, where Vicki Dalton digitized a ton of her records and stuff to be able to?
Well, everybody did.
Yeah.
I mean, the clerk's office, I mean, I'm surprised that there's
Clerks was the other one.
Yeah. files over there, because I thought the clerk's
Jam
office.
packed full the basement.
Public Works.
That one over there it's something, if you've never seen it.
It's,
Yeah, but I
my
mean, I
jaw
remember
dropped
getting
when I saw it.
Yeah.
a tour of the clerk's office when I first became commissioner, and how he was digitizing everything. So yeah, no, there was a big, 2016, a big push to get everything digitized. I mean, partly just so we didn't have Alex records around. We were running so much space for records as well. And so it was really digitizing, from that perspective. It was then we could put things on a good cycle for public records or for public retention. And so that way we were getting rid of things when we needed to get rid of them, and put them on more of the proper schedule. So I'm surprised that we have.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
I guess
lot
that's
was
what I
done, but a lot left to do.
I always thought Tim, the way he put it was that he was sort of doing a kind of era by era kind of thing.
Yes.
But I think in each of there's certain documents that I thought he had told me that they are digitizing, but they must keep the paper original on some of them, not all of them. But I think he but I think he was kind of moving sort of through the eras, trying to get to modern day, but I believe he had said there are certain documents that even though they were digitizing them legally, they cannot dispose of certain, well, I don't know what they are, but so there's certain ones they can't get rid of.
Does the state, I think it's the state that operates the archive center out in Cheney. Are they still functioning, and do we still have access to that?
But that's state archives. I don't know that that's local archives.
But I think
Isn't that where you take things,
lease
Gina?
space, you're thinking about leasing space from them.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
storing records out there and stuff with them and stuff, so, yeah.
So yeah, that is an option, and I know departments are really starting to look at what can they digitize and then destroy, and then what has to be retained,
Right.
and can the state archives office be the location that those files can go live. So Kyle, Tuhig, they're all looking at that right now. They're doing a ton of thank you. The HR office is looking at that risk, so I know a lot of departments are, but it's a huge project. That the other thing is we've been having a lot of our internal resources try and get through, so it's not taking the short amount of time we would hope for. So I think the other look is going to need to be, do we outsource this to like an Iron Mountain or someone like that, that's their specialty, once we understand what needs to be retained and what doesn't, and we could probably chew through those maybe a bit faster than what we are right now. But those are all things that I think are part of what Jeff's going to continue to look at and speak toward, is what options do we have, specifically around tons of documents that still sit in lots of hidden corners of the county.
Yeah, building and planning took this on, I think 2 years ago. They had all those, those rolling vault types of records on the first floor.
Right.
And they undertook a digitization process, used a third party to come in and take a lot of those records off site and bring them on to digital media for us, which allowed us to get rid of those. But there is a lot of that stuff that we could do across the county, but they end up using a third party for it because it was much more.
The housing authority, during the pandemic, when I was on the board, we did a major project over several years, got rid of a lot.
Yeah.
With parameters and with a third party.
Yep. And it's that you're doing it with your own staff, which is taking away from what else they're going to be working on, which then tends to slow it because it's only as time allows, or you use a third party, you invest into it and you have them do it, which is kind of their expertise.
Yeah, DeVries did a lot of that
Yeah,
stuff.
DeVries did for the housing
Yeah.
authority.
Yeah.
Well, we did the drawings here. We did under a grant. And we did them under that, but they would not store them because of the age and how fragile they were. So we're still responsible for ours, but we do have them all digitized. But we did that through the Cheney State Archives.
Just using valuable resource for
Right.
paper.
That's what I was thinking too, like if there was a way at the S&T, do we have to keep the records there, or is there a more effective place that is not on the county campus?
You go off-site for the
Yeah.
paper and
My guess is it's been available space in the past, so it just ended up there. Is it the best place? Should it be there? Probably not.
it's actually a garage. It's actually an underground garage that converted,
Oh.
there's actually a roll-up garage door
Got it.
that in the summer they open for nice weather days.
It's a big project though. I mean, that's the other piece of it. And a lot of departments are skinny right now. And so I think that's the other side of it, is dedicating that resource to really looking at the records. What are they? What's the retention schedule? Where can they go? Where do they live? So I know people are trying, but with the resources, we're just not getting there as quickly as maybe we'd hoped we would.
Well, I know to Josh's point, when I worked at King County, there was, why are we digitizing if we have to keep certain records? Digitizing does help in the searching function. But, I don't know if those laws have been updated in the last some years, but that was an issue. That you may digitize, but you still have to keep certain records.
My guess is it's gonna be a lot cheaper to digitize than it is gonna be to build new space.
Probably, yes.
Well,
So,
I mean, that's where you're saying, like, look at to your point, Ashley, yes, there's probably not the staff resources, but if we looked at what a third party cost would be for these records in Public Works and these here and these there, would it be cheaper than paying, you know, for a lease or not having to pay for a lease to move somebody when we have
More
those
than
records
likely.
sitting there?
Yeah. It just to make the decision, identifying some dollars, making the decision to be very purposeful, and then go, you know, department by department or a couple departments by department, say, we are going to do this. Let's go through and figure out which records need to be retained, which records can be moved to digitization, how much space we can free up. I agree, it's an effort, but it's likely much more cost effective than still either leaving space used by storage or leasing more space for storage. Most long.
Yeah, and I think a lot of departments, I mean, that was part of the exercise that we went through back in 16. So I think they probably know, and we'll have, I mean, so maybe just we're surveying the departments to see what that is and stuff, because it's, we can't determine what the cost would be or what we could allocate to resources until we know what the need is.
Yeah, what kind of records we have to.
You know, and I know, like,
Franchise.
you know, Randy was recording, you know, all of that, but I know that was a big part of what was done like in 16, 17.
On the resources side, it would be ARP eligible. Just, you know, there's some ARP still there, just saying it would be an option, particularly stuff around digitizing, thinking COVID, stay from home, being able to access without coming and going through boxes. It certainly meets the qualifications of a couple categories. Just put that out there.
So just for historical purposes, if you look at this drawing here, and you go right out the front door of the courthouse through the S&T building, if that was developed into the park as originally planned with parking underneath, you've got that green belt that goes to the west side of the health department building to the where that handicap sign is. That was another building to form Government Square, and then that green belt would take you right down to the river. That was part of the original concept back in 1910. Like I said, I was there.
And then Commissioner French, were you here 10, 12, 15 years ago when they talked about developing this whole lot?
Yeah.
Because there's a building on the Gonzaga campus, Hamilton and Desmond, if I'm saying it right. It's where I think the Zag store is, some of their alumni offices. It's one of those storefront around the perimeter with about 600 parking spots or in the interior. And that was, Gil was telling us about that. We'll speak to
Well, that was the one that Bruce and I went over and looked at. I think when we first, about 17, we went over when they started construction on that. Really beautiful facility. It's amazing how big the parking structure is, but the thing that caught our eye on it was it's about the identical footprint that we have here. The only difference is we have here going for us is the elevation. So we could actually probably add more space or more parking.
So I think that's all we have before executive session, unless there's more comments and questions. Or feedback, like we've certainly looked at other stuff. This was at a point where we were seeing some possible solutions for the prosecutors in district court and solutions in a way where you're not impacting other groups really at all. It's kind of a three-way trade of space here. And so thought it might be a good time to at least start the conversation with the board. And make sure we're kind of heading in directions.
So to continue the historical perspective, if you look to the left of the parking meter, the parking area for human resources, that area, the building there is the Triple Gables. The vacant lot to the north of that was for sale, and the county actually made an offer to buy that land at one time to try and to provide additional parking for the campus. We weren't gonna build a building on it, but just get more parking for employees and stuff. And so to my knowledge, the property is still available, but it's difficult to build on because again, it's a large cropping of rock. So that's why it never sold to anybody else, and since we've
It's
been.
sold.
Well,
It's a diamond
Did
parking
they
lot
put it-
now. They
Yep.
put it in about a
So
year
I
ago.
stand corrected, they
Yeah.
did buy it and did what we wanted to do, was parking.
It's almost empty though, so it's about $90 a month, so I look at it out my window and I wanna say it's a quarter full every day
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, we were gonna do it for employee parking and stuff, so that was how we were gonna get relief of that.
Yeah.
Just want you to make sure you know all the history. There's no use for me.
Just a general comment, I think this all sounds like a great starting point of initial considerations. I do kind of personally like to know what options are looked at, kind of why certain options are better than others. I think that helps with the brainstorming process, but thanks for starting the conversation.
I guess, yeah, I also this is really helpful.
Yeah.
The Public Works building appears to have some space availability too. So have you considered that as a space for some of the potential moves?
Yes, it could be, but it kind of hinges upon these first kind of decision points we want to make. This is just the start. So we've got other needs for co-location, other needs to consider bringing folks together. But rather than throwing everything out right now and making it pretty overwhelming, we thought we'd just start with this and again, not looking for a decision, but what's the next step? This will be a series of conversations that we anticipate having with you as we're doing kind of our next evaluation of what else is out there that we should be considering for space moves, for bringing teams together, et cetera. The unknown in all this, quite honestly, is what is the city of Spokane's plans with their space? They lease, and we'll have, in a subsequent one, we'll have kind of an overview of all the space that they have on county campus, municipal court, their probation, their courtrooms, as well as their administrative offices, their law enforcement. We've seen many times in the paper where they're looking at other space. They were looking at a Primera building at some point in time in the last year. If they were to leave, that completely changes. We've got space to do a lot of stuff with. They have space at the bottom floor of the public safety building. They've got space a little bit on the second floor. They've got space all over the annex. And then the public safety building for law enforcement is half the size of that building there. So that's the unknown is what, if anything, will happen with the city? Are they intent on finding another location to move to, or are they not?
And do they pay us for that space?
In theory.
They pay us for the annex rent. They pay for O&M on the public safety building because it was a bond issuance that the county went out for years ago, as I recall, but it was intended to be a joint use space. So that one, it's a shared O&M with the county, but the courthouse, they do pay for rent in the courthouse.
And Commissioner Waldorf, to your question, the Public Works doesn't have enough space for district court or prosecutors, some of the big pieces, and we were thinking, it's easier to find homes for the big groups and then plug in smaller groups. So that's one reason why Public Works wasn't brought up in this initial conversation, because things kind of started at the prosecutor and district court level for a few different reasons. That's not a solution for them.
And also knowing that any of our courtrooms require security.
Right,
And because
right.
Broadway has 2 courtrooms over there, and we have a security that impacts everyone going into there for 2 courtrooms. If we can find a location in an existing building that has security in there, we don't have to duplicate it somewhere else. So that would allow us to get rid of a security station, if you will, over in Broadway. Putting it over to Public Works requires us to
That
replicate
whole
security over
building
there.
and security.
Just for a ballpark, what is each floor of the public safety building square footage wise?
Safety or work?
Or public works, sorry,
Gil?
Right around 9,000.
for each floor?
Yeah.
Okay, just, thank you.
I can give you more accurate numbers if you need them.
When we started off this conversation, we were talking about the work from home versus hybrid. Do we feel we need to emphasize the telecommuting more like we have in the past? Are you still getting calls from employees that are upset that their department is making them come work? Because I remember that there was an instance there where we were really emphasizing if you can do your work from home, please let your employees do their work from home. And then there were a lot of folks calling and saying, I can do my work from home, but my director won't let me do my work from home.
So we don't really get those calls anymore, and I think it's because most people have moved to more of that hybrid. So
Okay.
there are 2 or 3 days a week here, 2 or 3 days home.
Okay.
Where I think our opportunities are, and we've talked about this quite a bit, but it's more of a hoteling model in the future. And
Instead
so,
of having the designated
Yeah.
spot for somebody that's
Yeah.
only here 2 days a week.
and that's what some of the departments that report through me are doing right now, that just the configuration of the buildings makes sense 5 years ago, but they don't
Yeah.
anymore. But because we haven't had the budget to have facilities come in and rework those, most of my teams now are on that hoteling model where they've all had to clean their spaces up. And so, public records, they'll come and go and share each other's spots. So some are on a Tuesday, Thursday, some are on a Monday, Wednesday. HR is the same. I have up to some desks that share 3 people, right? And so they just coordinate with each other, what days are you gonna be in the office? So I see that as probably being our future model versus the push to everybody work from home full time. I think most departments have found a good blend that work for them.
Okay.
There's really only a small handful of departments that require butts and chairs all the time, and those are electeds, and we have no ability to tell them any different, right? So I think for the most part, though, especially the departments that report through you all, have really adapted to that hybrid model quite well.
Yeah,
And then you were last year, year before, there was discussion about creating another collaboration center on either the 3rd or 4th floor of the Public Works building. So for folks that don't, that no longer have a designated workspace, that would be sort of it's not hotel, what's the other co-working space,
Yeah,
kind of the
and
co-working space.
That really didn't take off for us, to be honest.
Yeah.
That kind of shared space where multiple people came based on the department, that space is honestly used more right now for BOE hearing cases, because there's security there, and we've had some kind of stuff come up lately, so we use it for that. Jared's been using it a lot for like his media, public relations stuff. We've booked it a lot for like interviews, because we're short on conference area space more than anything. So we've actually seen the CoLab Center turn into more of a extra conference room, large space for people. But when people are coming in for the flex work scheduling, they still tend to sit in their own department teams, and they're working in those locations. So based on the utilization that we haven't seen, I don't know if I'd recommend another CoLab area, more so than really looking at the departments and saying, okay, how do we, when you move or don't move, or how do we reconfigure where it is more of a shared space? For example, I told Jeff the HR department very easily could have the HR department and public records department live together in the same building and work out of a hoteling situation versus having one in the safety building and one in the HR. So I think that's how we could look more strategically at these shared spaces, but make them a bit more department specific. So you kind of have same confidentiality rules, right? Same employee types that are doing work that's similar, where there's not that concern of who else is sitting in this room with me right now while I'm working on my stuff.
Yeah, I think I don't know that reinforcing anything would provide us a lot of value right now. People have kind of settled into what is working, and we are seeing a number of departments doing hybrid stuff. So I think that next step is, okay, so where you're doing hybrid, if your employee is in 2 days a week, 1 week, and 3 days a week, another week, do they have someone working on opposite schedules so that they can do more of that hotel sharing? So that's an area that we could step in a little bit more deliberate on doing to really help us figure out what space we have available for
But
us.
from the space planning side of that, we need to make sure that, if somebody is on a schedule where they're only on campus, 2 days a week, that they don't have a dedicated office or cubicle 7 days a week. I mean, because they don't need that space, that they're sharing that with somebody else. So, I mean, and I don't, my gut tells me that has not happened.
I would agree. I think some departments have out of necessity and others have not.
I think it's probably happening more ad hoc, Commissioner, I agree with you. It's not been very deliberate to do it because we haven't forced to do it, we haven't had the needs to do it, and we really haven't, in order to do it right, we do need to do some reconfiguration of spaces to make them more kind of hotel cubing sorts of areas. But we do have a handful of groups that are doing that right now, and just have a hot docking station.
So the rate of phone calls that you're getting from, well, my spouse is working from home now, so please let me come in.
No. No, believe it or not.
Is everything all right, Al?
You sleep in your office over the weekend.
Just saying.
Got a question. Don't want to get us too off topic, but for the emergency management folks, if we move forward with a community corrections and jail facility there, has there been any thought to where they would go?
I had just that conversation with the sheriff on Friday on this very topic because I wanted to get a sense of where he thinks an ideal place. It's the DEM and it's the sheriff's garage down there. And so we were brainstorming around a couple different ideas. He does generally believe that kind of central county stuff makes most sense, but he's also kind of challenging his team a little bit. Like DEM has a lot of indoor covered parking for their equipment that they have. They don't use that every day. Maybe they don't use it even once a month. So things like that, he believes it could go somewhere else. We've got the small arms range that we've been being out there. We have a larger parcel than is needed. You all have heard about Shrek's desire to put a facility out there, and a DEM possibly / parking garage could be an entire complex area that we look out there. The sheriff also has another thing he's working on with the Air Force Base that is a little bit premature to share with, but it could present a really unique opportunity for DEM. But yes, we've been talking about a few of those things. I've also shared the Valley has their police department needs some additional space for their patrol units that they're kind of bursting at the seams. There are some spots out of the fairgrounds, the entire campus, think about the entire campus, where our WSU extension building is, that's owned by the county, that's pretty underutilized inside. That could serve as some office space for some expanded needs. And I think there could be some spaces to put some sort of additional structure in and around the WSU annex that could serve as something the Valley needs for their patrol, something that the sheriff needs for his kind of displaced places here. So yes, definitely been talking about it. Some ideas haven't settled on something. The nice thing about both of those is there's no land acquisition costs. It's something the county owns already, so it reduces the cost to build something. And that would be the preference as opposed to going and finding something we have to go buy and then build or whatnot.
Well, and what about if Shrek were to move? I mean, couldn't they move out there? Because isn't that building, just like you were saying, our public safety building was built with bond funds from the entire county, but wasn't that building also?
Which one?
Where the sheriff's training center is? Wasn't that built with community funds? That's where they used to be until,
Are you talking small arms range?
no, the fire chief.
Oh, out here.
Oh, fire training center.
Yeah, the fire
And
training
that's where
center.
they were
Yeah.
until.
Oh, DEM, you mean? Yeah,
Yes.
DEM.
Until our fire chief, the city fire chief kicked him out. But it
That would
was
be-
supposed to be shared space because
That's-
it was paid for by taxpayers, just like our space here.
My understanding was that's where their office space was.
Yes.
So,
And
yes,
this
that
is for
could be
you.
another,
But I mean, if Shrek were to move, I mean, that's all,
Oh, could they move out there? Oh, yeah.
you know, because again, that was all paid for with citizen
Mhm.
dollars, I think was a bond issue.
Yeah, it's grant money and stuff that we got for that facility and stuff,
Seems
so.
like it was in 1999. I don't know if that was part of the fire bond or maybe, I don't remember.
Oh, well, the fire department, the training facility for the fire department was part of the 99 bond issue that the city did. But the Shrek building was grant money that the city and the county got together. It was a joint effort that we
Oh, the
got.
combined communications center out there.
Combined
Yep.
communication, combined communications facility was actually supposed to be the name of the facility when we got the grant money to pay for it.
That's right, because that's when we moved all of our 911 stuff
Yep.
down from the river down here over out
Up
into
to
the,
there,
yep.
right.
It's really good.
So I
That's
don't
really
know
good
if that would
observation.
be a good,
Well, that's what we
Place.
referred to it as.
because
for
then it's
many
a
years.
Yeah.
central location.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't realize
especially if
DM
Shrek
was
moves out.
originally.
and
They
put
were,
money
and
back
then
in
they
that,
got
then
kicked
that's
out.
great.
Yep. Good idea.
Very good.
Oh, that's why we
We're
bring these
brain-
things
we're
up.
brainstorming.
What have we missed on all the moving pieces and stuff around?
Just a general question, what's the idea of kind of a process for consultation, right? Of talking to the court if they're gonna be moving around,
Community court?
with the departments or with
Municipal court or district court?
either, just generally.
I mean, municipal court, our doors are always open. We've heard that they've been talking in the city. We've asked, I've had some calls from the city administration, and they've asked if they've talked with us, and we've said no, but tell them to come talk to us so that we actually know their plans. We can at least have an idea of where they're going to go. District court, we would have a level of conversation with them. Already have a bit with prosecutor's office, I believe, so they're.
The prosecutor's office likes the idea of consolidation. District
I think
court would
district court would
absolutely
be
love to
delighted.
be in one. I mean, who wouldn't want to have your operations together?
On the municipal court space that's in the Broadway building, we used to have a lease with them and stuff. Didn't we allow that lease to go to month?
We don't have
We still
Union
have-
Broadway anymore.
There's no more?
Broadway is only district court at this point.
Okay, so we moved them out of there.
I guess I would just say, I mean, this is our first time hearing this, so it's very, very preliminary, that I'm sure it won't get out that it's set in stone, but it's like, none of this is set, that it's just very preliminary
Look at the
discussions.
fine print, there's drafts.
I guess.
Make it bigger and red.
I mean, yes, Commissioner, we're socializing this, as we come up with ideas, we socialize it with, if there's other electeds, just to get their feedback, their temperature on stuff, but again, because nothing's set in stone, we don't wanna get too far ahead of opportunities to visit with all of you and see if we're on the right track or not, so they're just kind of hallway conversations about, hey, what if? What does this look like? Tell us any showstoppers, what are we missing in terms of this evaluation?
It's a little awkward because we can't have official conversations with them. We haven't talked to you, but we're trying to get feedback from them before we talk to you. So it's very informal at this point.
So if we need to go into executive session, just discuss,
Yeah, the second part of this, yes.
yes. So my question is, I know there's at least one other miscellaneous item, because then we have other executive session items that we need to deal with, we have 3 of them. Can we deal with the miscellaneous item before we go into executive session? Because I know the other 3 we discussed earlier, we did not anticipate any decisions to be made. This one, we certainly would not be
We're nowhere near action on.
making a decision. So that way then after we go through executive session, we can just adjourn for the day and not have people waiting around to come out and come back in and all of that.
Yep. I think the other miscellaneous, Randy, you had one, right?
I did, and I could wait till next week. I didn't bring the contract with me. It's for the WSU
Okay.
contract. Every year, we update the WSU extension contract. WSU normally due in January. We've got the signed copy back from them. It's what we had budgeted. It's the same amount. And so I'll bring that to you guys next Monday, and we'll just put it on next Tuesday's agenda. But it's just for us to sign it also.
So just for my knowledge, so those buildings are owned by the county and WSU leases them from us.
The WSU extension, yes.
Right. Okay.
We pay them to be there as well.
Okay.
It's an interesting contract. We provide, all counties throughout the state
Sure, have
provide
an
money
extension.
to WSU extension, yeah, so We do have a couple of small state agencies who lease space from us in there, but it's pretty small.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really,
It is owned
it's
by-
really a partnership. And is it common that WSU Extensions will have a partnership with the county? And, okay, and so there's space that's shared and a mutual benefit to the
Right, and we
community.
we
Okay.
provide funding as well to them, you know, so like your Master Gardener program, your food safety programs, all of those are kind of out of the WSU Extension in combination between WSU and the
So
counties.
And they get grants on their own as well.
So with this contract, we will pay them $304,000 in 2023 to cover the costs of their people that are shared
Got it. Okay,
at the county.
thanks.
I think I did want to have a miscellaneous on Blake.
Sure.
Just kind of where we're at. You had a meeting with the other city attorneys.
Yes,
And just so we can continue down our path.
absolutely. So last Wednesday, I met with a number of the other attorneys. Spokane City Attorney's Office was there, City of the Valleys attorneys were there. And then as well as, Millwood, Liberty Lake, and Medical Lake, thank you. We're all there. We discussed moving forward on ordinance addressing controlled substances in the event that the legislature does not come out of this special session with anything. The general consensus is everybody in this area is interested in passing something. Obviously, the city, I think, will be passing something very soon. We primarily discussed making sure that the standards that are being implemented are going to be consistent region-wide for both kind of practical implications as it relates to the sheriff's office enforcing ordinance and potentially enforcing various ordinance, as well as the prosecutor's office, taking things to court, but then, certainly also for just general equity region-wide, that we are all setting the criminal standard kind of on the same level. I think generally there is consensus that gross misdemeanor is where things are being set. That's where all of the draft ordinance that I have seen have been set as a possession of a controlled substance would be as a gross misdemeanor. At the end of the week, last week, I drafted a draft controlled substance ordinance for the county that was basically consistent with much of what I've seen as far as examples. Snohomish County, I used theirs as kind of a base starting point, made a few modifications, but it's generally consistent with that. I can forward you to that to all of the commissioners and anybody else who would like to see it. Larry Haskell has taken a look at that, and I sent it to all of the other city attorneys so that they can review it and let me know if they had any concerns or if their councils were wanting to take it in any different direction than what I had drafted. The smaller cities indicated that they were interested in more or less following the county's lead on this, and I do have a follow-up call tomorrow morning with the City of the Valleys attorney.
So was that an event on Saturday, and had an opportunity to meet with a couple of legislators, both from the Senate and the House, and was told that there is no compromise legislation being brought forward so far, and was suggesting that the only compromise that they might be able to reach is to try and alleviate some of the confusion by saying the only ones that can pass legislation to deal with the Blake would be counties, and not allow the cities to do it. And he said there might be support for that kind of legislation. And I thought, well, that'll be interesting to tell a city that you can't adopt something. And then whether that was speculation on their part, or whether it was really the only thing that was going to be mutually agreed upon, because he thought that both, in the absence of agreement on the underlying, that maybe they could agree to just have 39 different statutes instead of 265. So that was an interesting comment to be made. So whether that it actually ends up getting traction or not, I don't know. But I thought it was interesting that both members of the House and Senate made the same comment to me.
Chris, will I have a mandatory court appearance attached to it, or do you know?
The drafts I've seen and the draft I have written does not have a mandatory court appearance currently attached to it. The other issue on these is many of them have included a prohibition on use, as well as a prohibition on possession. There is some concern legally as far as the prohibition on use, both as far as how effective that is. The use part is, generally consumed by the possession part of the prohibition. Additionally, because they are misdemeanors, any offense has to occur in the presence of a law enforcement officer. So use would really only come up if a law enforcement officer happens to walk along simultaneously while somebody is in the process of using a controlled substance. It cannot be, you cannot base a conviction off of circumstantial evidence or even other direct evidence. It must occur in the presence of a law enforcement officer.
So you said misdemeanor, you mean gross misdemeanor?
I do for possession. The use statutes, the use ones have mostly been misdemeanors. That's not set in stone, but as I said, they are somewhat redundant. There are some other legal concerns that should probably be discussed before any final decisions are made.
Yeah, I was just trying to gauge the impact on the jail.
Yeah, there would not be a mandatory booking or a mandatory appearance on it.
So I'm sorry, just if you don't mind, so when I talked to Councilmember Naring, he indicated that the Snohomish model was going to be gross misdemeanor, because that's what was in the Senate and seemed to get the most bipartisan support.
Their possession ordinance is gross misdemeanor.
Right.
The use ordinance, the use portion is a misdemeanor.
Just, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So open, that's the open use, that would be.
So it's adding two.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So the point of that is because if you are using, you're in possession.
Correct.
So it's just to add an additional charge to make it more.
And or an
I guess-
alternative and or, I mean, theoretically.
To discourage public use,
Right.
because you would get two charges instead of one.
Well, I think it would be unlikely you could be convicted of both of those off
Yeah.
of the same instance.
Yeah. So,
I don't want to say for sure, but that would seem to be duplicative. So it would be likely that the possession statute would control on that.
Unless you're passing it around.
Sure.
So I'm hearing the same thing. I was at a conference with legislators, both on the Senate side and the House side, and that the governor is calling people back for a special session. There is no deal that has been made. And traditionally, a deal's been made when they call you back for the special session. And so he's got 30 days, which would take us, because I think it's May 16th, takes us to June 16th, which is almost at the cutoff. And so I think, counties or commissioners that I saw there too were talking about that, we just all have to be poised to have it be ready and in place. And if a special, if something does come out of the special session, great. But if we're not poised and ready, we're going to be behind. And so would next week, should we have Sheriff Knowles and Larry, Prosecutor Larry Haskell here so we can really have a discussion? Because I think we've got to really talk about what are the realities of arresting or not and prosecuting and to make sure that it's an ordinance that is going to be effective.
And that was the suggestion that was made Saturday, was pass your ordinance right away, subject to the state doing something so that you weren't caught with the window where you hadn't got anything in place and stuff. So I would agree with Mary. I mean, let's just move forward as though they aren't going to come to an agreement, because it does look like they are, and at least have something in place for Spokane County so that the other cities, because I met with Cheney Friday morning, and they said, give us enough time to mirror what you're doing. And so,
Yes.
We don't want to, pass it for the county and then leave the cities hanging out because we didn't give them enough time.
Certainly, and that is how
Keep
I.
in mind that a lot of the cities only meet once a month.
And that is how I currently have it drafted, with an effective date of July 1, and a provision in there that accounts for a potential state statute being enacted in the interim. And so it could be enacted at any point, would go into effect on July 1 in the event the state does not preempt it.
So if you can get that draft out to us, and then if we can schedule and have the sheriff and the prosecutor here on Monday.
And I
So we
can
can actually have,
speak to Larry about that this week.
because
I
you'll have
also
your
have
next
I also have a
meeting,
meeting with the sheriff later this week as well.
and you'll have your next meeting with the city attorney.
I'm speaking with the Valley City Attorney tomorrow. I don't have anything else scheduled.
That was my.
Because I know that was,
fault.
the sheriff, was, did want to try to have any jurisdiction that they're contracting with or, overseeing, to have it be the same, at least for the sheriff's
Yes.
deputies.
Yeah, and that's, the
important
meeting
piece.
last week, all of the attorneys came out on the same page as far as that goes. And so the Valley had a rough draft put together as well, though as far as at least the legal standards go, what I drafted is the same as theirs, or is matching. Obviously, the city is kind of doing their own thing right now, but they have their own enforcement in their own courts, so that doesn't affect us in that sense. And the other cities who were able to participate in that meeting said that they were wanting to follow the county's lead on it, and I'm waiting to hear any feedback, but basically where we left it was once they had a chance to review anything that they were intending on doing differently, so that we could then kind of work on coordinating those. But I have not, as of yet, I've only heard back from the city of the Valley, and we're going to be speaking on those issues tomorrow morning.
So who's the attorney for the Valley now?
I'm speaking with their, I believe it's their senior deputy city attorneys, Tony B.
Chris and then Josh.
When you say Snohomish was kind of the basis, what does that mean? Is that a particular council member's proposal, or is it, where are they at in their process?
They had a draft ordinance that has been kind of widely distributed at this point, to the extent at this point, I believe it's posted on MRSC. So I believe that they came out with it early, and it has been circulated statewide.
Is it adopted?
I don't know if Snohomish has adopted it or not.
I don't
Commissioner
think it's.
French, have you?
They haven't adopted it
Okay.
yet, but it's in the queue to be adopted. So Councilman, because it's Charter County, Councilman Nehring is the one that's led the effort, but I've talked to Councilman Lowe and a couple others that have all said, yeah, that seems to be the one that everybody's agreeing to, so it's moving through the process.
When you were saying that everybody wants to follow the county's lead, is this the attorneys are saying that, or
That's
the
what they were-
actual
That's what they were.
elected council members that
No,
were
no. These were the city
So,
attorneys who were in the meeting. I believe they were speaking to the effect of, as far as drafting an ordinance and trying to get everything lined up, they were not gonna attempt to draft their own before they saw the county's draft. And then the idea was that once they had a chance to take a look at our draft, then we could kind of coordinate any potential issues, or if they were interested in going a different direction, then we would try to coordinate and reconcile any differences that they had, so that we could address the standards and ensuring that they're the same, again, especially across any jurisdictions that our prosecutor's office or sheriff's office is serving.
Okay.
So if the city does pass something tonight, I don't know if it's on the agenda for tonight, but could you also circulate if anything's adopted, so we can see the final draft of that as well?
Certainly, and I will say that the draft of the cities that I saw, it is not far off of what I drafted as well. I have not seen anything that really deviates in any significant degree. There are a handful that discuss kind of post arrest or pre-charging diversionary programs. But those are going to be kind of specific to the law enforcement agency that is working there. And I will send you out. I'll send you out ours. I can include the copy of the Snohomish County one as well.
Great.
And what I've got.
Can I get a copy too?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, at this point, it has been distributed amongst other jurisdictions. It's a public record, so.
And you'd be able to go online to see what the Senate bill was, that the Senate was.
But did the Senate bill include some of the treatment options and the funding associated with those, which we would not be able to necessarily put into our own
Correct.
ordinance? So
Correct.
that's a major difference.
And that's the major difference between
Right.
the House and the Senate. So that's why you're seeing bipartisan support at the county levels, because that's not part of what our ordinance is discussing. It's really just trying to say, we can't.
Just how would you
open-
charge, how would you,
And there's still
Yeah.
state laws surrounding that, so that's why it can't be, I don't think it can be more than a gross misdemeanor.
No.
So.
Right.
So no, so still hoping the state, does what they need to do. But, we just need to be, like I said, first and ready, and that's why, from what I'm seeing across the state and other counties, it's not a partisan effort at all. It's a bipartisan, just to say we need to, take care of this issue, so.
right,
so
I'm
it's
just
not
making it
open.
clear that the major difference with us adopting something, it's not gonna include all those treatment and the funding that goes along with it. So,
Yeah,
just a statement of fact.
Yeah.
It will be different than the Senate bill
yes.
because of those reasons.
So, okay, I'll have you and Scott work on getting that on the agenda on Monday, so we can, and kind of give us our timeline of when we need to be having it, so, because I know we've got to do some public hearings on it.
Yes, that one will require a 10-day notice and a public hearing in order to enact. So,
But that would be great, just kind of have the calendar and understand that. Okay. Okay, with that then, we have 3 executive sessions that have been continued from this morning. We have one that is being added, so we will do that one first, so that way Gil and Jeff can not have to be in the, yes.
To be excused.
So, okay. So what I had is, from this morning, I'm gonna read the ones that I have from this morning, that is potential and pending litigation. Steve Bartel would be in attendance along with our executive management team, the commissioners.
Steve won't be able to attend today, so Ashley will brief it.
Okay, so Ashley will brief on Steve's behalf. So Steve will not be here, and Ashley Cameron will be briefing on his behalf, but she's part of our executive management team. Our Chief Civil Deputy, Chris Anderson, will be in all 4. And then there wasn't anyone else I had identified in the other 2.
Nope.
Okay,
Just
and then
just Gil for
in the one that we're going to have now that is new would be Gil and Jeff
Rebecca, because she's done a lot of this with us too.
and Rebecca. Okay,
I know, should other executive management be here?
Yeah, they can stay because I'll be in here for the rest of them. And that one's acquisition, lease of real estate under RCW 4230 110 1B. That one's about, I would say, 20? Yeah, 20 minutes. I think
so I have 45 minutes, 15 minutes for each of the 3.
I think we can reduce this one to 10. If there's follow-up for Steve particularly, we'll have to bring him back in. 10, 15.
Which takes me to an hour.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay. So it is now 3:21. We are gonna go into executive session for 1 hour. No decisions are expected to be made, so we will adjourn after that and see everyone tomorrow.